First off, I do want to welcome all of our new commissioners and congratulate you on the election and wish you good fortune through the course of the term. I'd also like to recognize the new members of the Paulding Planning Commission. I have Mr. Ellis Aston, Miss Wendy Turnbill. What's your name again? Mr. Jim Henson. My name is Jody Palmer. This is Roger Leggett. Matt Lowe, we're the old guys here, and Mr. Sudan is the new member on this end. If you bear with us, first thing we need to do is to have everybody turn any audible device off or to silence so it does not interrupt the proceedings of this meeting and interrupt my concentration because I need every last bit of it. At this point, I'm going to ask for a nomination for chairman for the Planning Commission.
I'll nominate Jody Palmer.
Second.
I have a nomination for Jody Palmer by Mr. Ellis Aston and a second by Mr. Leggett. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
And signify by raising your hand so I can look down through there. Thank you very much. That's 6-0 and 1. We need a nomination for a vice chair, which would be the person who sits in the hot seat if I'm not here.
I nominate Roger Leggett.
I have a nomination by Mr. Lowe for Roger Leggett. Do I have a second by Mr. Sudan? Any discussion? All in favor? Motion passes. Notice 5, 0, and 2. I would advise everybody that this is a recommending body only. We're here to hear the cases that will come before it. We will forward those cases with a recommendation, assuming there's nothing that rises that causes us to table or postpone consideration, will be forwarded to the jurisdiction that applies to the application. In most instances, it will likely be the Paulding County Board of Commissioners. There is an application and another agenda item that will be forwarded to the City of Hiram for their consideration. So depending on who you're here for, if you would just consider that as to where you need to be after this meeting. At this time, has everybody had an opportunity to review the minutes from this last session of this body? Are there any questions, comments, concerns, edits? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion for approval of the minutes.
I move that we accept the
I have a motion to approve the minutes by Ms. Turnbill. I have a second by Mr. Leggett. All in favor? Motion passes 6-0 and 1. I'd also advise anybody that has business before this Planning Commission today, Those that would wish to speak on behalf of the application, which would include the applicant or their agent or anybody who wants to speak favorably toward it, is allotted 15 minutes to make a presentation to the Planning Commission. Questions from the Planning Commission or from the Board of Commissioners to the applicant or anybody at that lectern does not count against that time. If you plan on coming up to speak, the applicant has the opportunity to use all of the 15 minutes if they so choose, or they may use a portion of it, reserving time for those that wish to speak after them or for rebuttal after the opposition speaks. Anybody wishing to voice opposition to a particular application or may have questions, comments, or concerns will come up to speak when I give that call. There's 15 minutes allotted in total for that as well. If you do come forward to speak, be mindful of those that might be waiting behind you to speak, to give them an opportunity, because after the 15 minutes is up, unless the Planning Commission wants to extend that time, it will not be extended. Applicant or their agent must be present for the application to be considered. At this time, I will ask Mr. Robinson to make a couple of announcements, and then we'll present the first case.
First of all, Happy New Year, and thank you for being on this board and being with us. And we're staff here to help you all the way through if you need any questions or anything. But we appreciate your service, and thank you, Board of Commissioners.
And as of today, it's only 11 months to Christmas. Please keep that in mind.
Thank you.
Just wanted to make an announcement. Case 2019-01Z, Joe Anderson, and 2019-01 SUP, Joe Anderson, and case number 2019-04 SUP. Those cases have been forwarded by staff to the February meeting for a little more discussion on those. So they will be heard in February.
Understood. One other announcement. Board of Commissioners, as y'all are, some of y'all may be new to this, I've been asked by your media team to ensure that if you intend to speak, grab that long extension microphone directly in front of Mr. Hart and speak into it so that our viewers at home or wherever they may be streaming this can hear you. Thank you.
Okay. First application, 2019-01 LUP, application by Jennifer Odom and William Odom for a land use permit on approximately 3.75 acres for a small cabinet shop to make and repair cabinets in an accessory structure on a residential property. Property is located in land lot 1033, District 2, Section 3. It's on the south side of Ship Circle and the west side of McClung Road. It's in Commission Post 1. This land use permit was originally approved in 2016. Those require renewal every 2 years, and so the Odoms are back to have this land use permit approved. If you choose to approve this application, we're recommending 4 stipulations that are printed. The applicant is present.
If the applicant will please come around, sign in, state your name, and address your comments to the chair, which is me.
Mr. Chairman, we have had no complaints or issues on this application
Just about
in
to
the
ask
past
you.
2 years.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, gentlemen. Good day. We had this approved a couple of years ago, and
Would you state your name for the record, please?
I'm sorry, William Odom.
Thank you, sir.
ODOM.
Please
So,
continue.
yeah, so we came before the commissioners and had this approved a couple of years ago, and we haven't really changed anything. So I don't know that there's anything else to put with it, you know.
All right. You're aware of the 4 stipulations that are listed with this LUP, and you're agreeable to those?
Yes, sir.
All right. Are there any questions for the applicant from the Planning Commission?
So this is a reapplication, it's not a new application?
Yes, sir.
Any other questions to the applicant from the Planning Commission?
You still have the same number of employees? I see you have 2 employees at this time.
Actually, I haven't gotten any yet. It has been real slow. I currently have a commercial shop in Hiram, and I produce commercial cabinetry and whatnot. And my intention was to close it and retire, but so far that hadn't happened. So we haven't used this facility much in the past 2 years. You know.
Any other questions from the Planning Commission? Hearing none, Board of Commissioners, any questions?
I
Mr.
do have a
Davis?
question. It may be more for staff than for the applicant, but I was curious about the 4 stipulations that are listed here. Is this a change from anything from the previous application 2 years ago?
There are no changes. Those 4 stipulations were also part of the original LUP approval. The only thing is, during that time, the first one, there was going to be an expansion of the accessory structure, which has occurred.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions from the Board of Commissioners? Thank you, Mr. Odom. You may take your seat.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else that would wish to speak on behalf of this application? Is there anyone that would wish to speak in opposition to this application or may have questions, comments, or concerns? Hearing none, at this time, I will entertain a motion regarding application 2019-01-LUP.
Move we accept the application.
Second.
A motion to approve by Mr. Henson and a second by Mr. Aston. All in favor? Motion passes 6-0 and 1. And again, this will be forwarded to tonight's meeting at 7, am I correct? I got the times right? At the Board of Commissioners meeting for consideration. Applicant needs to be present for it to be considered. Mr. Robinson.
Okay, the next application is 2019-02Z, application by Wintergreen Development LLC, Joe L. Larkin, Sam's Larkin, Huff and Bally LLP, to rezone approximately 1.48 acres from R2 Suburban Residential District to R55 Active Adult Residential District. And this is to add the subject property to its recently approved 74-acre age-restricted subdivision that's planned. Property is on Macklin Road, on the north side of Macklin Road, west of Poplar Springs Road. It's in land lot 442, District 19, Section 2. It's in Commission Post 1. Staff's recommended approval with 18 stipulations. The original application was approved last year for the majority of the property, and this is a little piece that would help access. The applicant is present.
The applicant, please come around, sign in, state your name, and address your comments to the chair.
Good afternoon. My name's Joel Larkin, and I'm with the law firm Sam's Larkin, Huff and Bally in Marietta, Georgia. I was before this board, although there are a lot of different faces, back in September, and we submitted a rezoning application for about 74 acres on Macklin Road in Poplar Springs. And we were successfully able to rezone that to R55 for a subdivision serving seniors in Paulding County. Since then, we've identified one additional approximately 1 acre house, and we've talked to the adjacent church and have an agreement to acquire between 3 and 4/10 of an acre from them, the purpose of which is to facilitate the access to this property. We're also, as a part of that, working with the church. We're going to remove their septic tank system that's failing and hook them into the sewer system that will serve this sanitary sewer system that will serve this project. The staff has recommended approval with 18 stipulations. We're generally agreeable to them. These are the same conditions that were proposed back in September. However, this body and the Board of Commissioners slightly modified those conditions and added one additional stipulation, and I've got some copies, and we'd like to ask that the same modifications be made. These are the actual minutes from that September hearing. Two of the stipulations you have relate to sewer, and they are stipulations 12 and 16. One of those stipulations, number 12, deals with what would happen if we get sewer service from Cobb County. There is an option to go to Cobb County and tie into their system, and that would gravity flow. Condition 16 deals with if we use Paulding County system, in which case we'd have to pump into the system. We are talking with your water and sewer department, and they're talking to Cobb County. Most likely we'll be going into Cobb County. But what we did at the last meeting on the last zoning is we added language in front of 12 and 16 to make that condition applicable if we went that route, because both conditions can apply to the property. So we would ask that that be added again. And then we asked for and received a new stipulation 19 that gave us the flexibility to go into the buffers and disturb them and plant them pursuant to a landscape plan approved by your staff. Because in a lot of instances, the existing buffer areas really aren't very effective in providing buffering. So we would ask that that same stipulation be added so that this property, which is going to be a part of the other property, have the exact same stipulations and conditions. With that, I'm going to, hopefully it's not presumptuous of me, but I'm going to reserve the rest of my time for questions from you and from anyone else. But we are not proposing any additional density. We're not proposing any additional units. We've added this land to help us facilitate the access. And I thank you.
Are there any questions to the applicant from the Planning Commission? And maybe I should do this first. Mr. Coates, welcome to the meeting. Wanted to ask you, are you familiar with the listed stipulations and the proposed amendments from the previous session and also from this requested change?
Yeah, we'd be agreeable to the same modifications.
All right. And then regarding stipulation number 19, Mr. Robinson, do you want to take any comment on that?
We're okay with this stipulation also. It would only affect the eastern property line of this 1 acre piece of property.
The bottom left corner as we're looking at it.
This little strip right here.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, Mr. Larkin, if you'd step back up to the microphone. Are there any questions to the applicant from the Planning Commission?
Mr. Larkin, on plat we have here, the access to Macklin that's shown as a hatch line, that is going to be a permanent access, is that not right?
Can you point to where you're talking about?
The drive going into Macklin, the access going into Macklin, is not shown here to be permanent, it's shown to be kind of a, it's not permanently drawn in like the rest of the plot.
The access has not been definitively established. I think one of the conditions requires that we work that out with staff, and we have to work that out with the state DOT because there's a widening project, and we have been talking with them since long before we filed this. So we have a general idea where we think it's going to be, but we don't completely control that.
But there will be a permanent access
There will be a permanent
Okay.
primary access on the Macklin Road, and then when, in a later phase, the eastern part is developed, there'll be access to Poplar Springs as well.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions to the applicant from the Planning Commission? Board of Commissioners, any questions? Thank you, Mr. Larkin. You can take your seat.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else here that would wish to speak on behalf of this application? If you want to speak on behalf, please come around, sign in, state your name, and address your comments to the chair.
I don't have an application number. Do I need to have one?
No,
To
sir.
speak?
Are you here to speak on behalf of this current application in favor of?
Hi, my name is Andy Wilson, and I'm here to represent my property, which is going to be influenced by the the stipulation number 12, which is the sewer going into Cobb County. Currently, there's nothing that goes into that sewer. The property would actually, the sewer line would actually have to be taken, I'm sure you've got that plan, but it goes through another neighbor's property to tie into my sewer, and which have to cross Poplar Springs Road, which means that the road would have to be impacted in some way in order for that to happen. And currently, there's a ditch that I've been maintaining at that area, and they would have to come somehow over that ditch, which would impact the water flow that comes down the hill into the creek. And my concern is that I don't know how that's going to happen. I know why they want to connect to it, but I'm actually in Cobb County, not Paulding County. So I'll be impacted by this project, and my property will be impacted by the project, and the creek itself will be impacted by the project, because in that area, it's a very low area that the sewer line actually is. And it's actually flooded before in that area. In '09, it flooded. And that's my concern, is what happens if that floods again. Is that going to, wash over into my property? And the fact that it could do some damage to that, and also the fact that the water coming down the hill, how's it going to impact the drainage into the ditch going into the creek itself? That's my biggest concern.
Mr. Wilson, this hearing is to determine whether the proposed use is acceptable and in compliance with the comprehensive plan of Paulding County and the future land use plan of Paulding County, and then generally whether or not it would be good for that area.
Right.
The concerns that you're giving to me right now would be handled more appropriately through the planning review process that both the county will have to hold regarding this project prior to them ever sticking a shovel into the ground.
Okay.
And then any extension of the sewer line service would have to be a detail worked out between the developer, Paulding County Water and Sewer, and then Cobb County Water and Sewer as to how to get from point A to point B where they're planning to discharge the sewage to. That is not something that this board would really be taking into consideration.
Okay.
We're simply determining whether or not the proposed use is acceptable.
I understand.
And your concerns, I think, need to be noted, and Mr. Braden Robinson over there is doing that as we speak. And we'll make sure that Mr. Coates, who is a representative of Paulding Water, if you'd raise your hand just so he'll know, you can speak to him after this meeting to give your concerns to him, and I'm sure he will relay those to his counterparts at Cobb Water.
I appreciate your time. And is there any way of being notified when all this happens? Of these
Well,
different things?
once this meeting has adjourned, any decisions made on these applications will be forwarded to, this one particularly will be forwarded to the Board of Commissioners for their consideration tonight. And again, that's only whether or not the proposed use is appropriate.
Okay.
As far as any type of construction let date, that will be dependent upon the developer getting started with their project. And I'm sure that the county will be made well aware of that due to the plan review process and issuing the permits that are necessary for them to build a subdivision. I don't mean to be so long-winded. It's not an easy encapsulated answer, but yes, they'll know when it's happening, and I'm sure you can call and ask, has the permits been issued? They will not be sticking a shovel in the ground without a development permit from the county.
Okay, appreciate that.
Thank you
Thank
very
you for
much,
your
sir.
time.
Yes, sir. I'm going to go back to the question of is there anyone wanting to speak on behalf of this application? I didn't see anybody, but I don't want to shortchange anyone. Yes, sir.
Hello, I'm Dana Hoffman. I'm the property chairman of Mighty Fortress Lutheran Church, which adjoins the property just to the west. And we would be the folks who would do the property exchange of the slightly over 3/10 of an acre. But for us and our outlook on it, it's nothing but a benefit to have hopefully several hundred new neighbors. Our ability to use our full property has been very limited due to a septic system that is it's only 10 years old, but it's a constant repair and maintenance issue, and it would benefit us greatly if there was ability to hook to sewer. And I think that hookup would also benefit our neighbors who get the runoff from our current system. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Mr. Hoffman.
You're welcome.
Is there anyone else that would wish to speak on behalf of this application? Hearing none, is there anyone that would wish to speak in opposition to this application or may have questions, comments, or concerns? If you would please come around, sign in, state your name, and address your comments to the chair.
My name is Stacy Hall. I'm one of the property owners that sewer will have to go through if they tie into Cobb County, and have great concern about what's going to happen. They've already been on my property surveying without permission, and it is posted. And just don't know what's going to go on. I know the runoff is going to be great into the creek. The creek is a trout stream. And like I say, I hadn't been able to get any information whatsoever.
After this meeting, if you would please get with Mr. Robinson, he's the gentleman on the front corner seated there,
I know him.
and see if you can get a copy of the application packet so that you can have some information on the project. Regarding some surveying taking place on your property, has it been actually on your property or within the right-of-way of the roadway?
Right down the middle of the property.
Okay. All right, sir. Thank you very much. Is there anything further you want to add?
No, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Is this a copper pot?
His residence?
Yes.
Mr. Hall? Did I get your name right? Was it Stacy Hall?
Stacy Hall.
Yes, sir.
S-T-A-C-Y.
Okay. Are you did you say you were a Cobb or a Paulding resident, just for the record?
I'm a Cobb resident.
Yes, sir.
I own property.
Okay. Is there anyone else that would wish to speak in opposition to this application, or may have questions, comments, or concerns? If you would sign in, state your name, and address your comments to the chair.
Russell Smith, and my family lives to the east in Cobb. My comment is we've contracted Atlanta Environmental Engineering to do a site study of all of this. Our concern's not with the builder. We wish them luck. Hope it's safe and profitable. My concern's with you guys, with the county, with the runoff, with the sewer. We want them to build this in a bad way, but at the same time, we don't want runoff. We'd like to get fire protection out of the deal. We'd like to get high-speed internet, and we'd certainly like to get a little better traffic control. We're at about 3,000 cars a day on Poplar Springs Road, according to y'all's traffic count. We welcome all of those people, but they don't always drive in a manner that we would hope. So that's what we'd like to see out of this, is a profitable and safe job for the developer, and that the county lives up to their end of the deal to enforce what needs to be done to make it a winner for all of us. So pretty positive about it, and like I said, just hope it goes safe and profitable for everybody. So thanks for your time, and thanks to the commission for having us up here.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Is there anyone else that would wish to speak in opposition or may have questions, comments, or concerns? Hearing none, would the applicant please come back?
My name is Albert Smith. I'm Land Acquisition Manager for Wintergreen Development and Winsong Properties. And I figured I'd like to address a couple of those issues. I'd had a survey crew out there to survey in the right-of-way and in another area, and they did not follow their emailed instructions to stay in those two spots and cross Mr. Hall's property, which I have profusely apologized for. And it will not happen again. But just to address that one particular comment. But as far as the sewer and the runoff, we're working hard with the county. I think it's been said several times now that we're going to Cobb. We're working to go to Cobb. We are working to go to Cobb, but we still have the option to go back to Paulding. Nothing is agreed to and set in stone. We've submitted the plans. I've met with Corey and the rest of the Water and Sewer Department. We're trying to figure out what the best option is. But as we all know, if I'm going to cross somebody's property, I got an easement from them. So this is not something that's set in stone. And Mr. Wilson, I will gladly meet with you afterwards so I can explain anything that is going on. Once again, that's sanitary sewer, not storm sewer that would be running out there. So runoff and sanitary sewer are two separate issues, but we would like to address those in any way we can.
Are there any questions for the applicant from the Planning Commission? I'm sorry, is there something further that you want to add, Mr. Larkin?
Briefly, I just wanted to highlight, we're not in here today seeking approval for this project. This project is approved and is ongoing. And I don't mean to say that to slight anybody, but we're not asking for any more houses today. We're asking to add that small little piece of land that will facilitate design of the entrance. So, to the extent there's confusion about that. The other technical issues that have been discussed today are challenges that you have whenever you develop any subdivision, and we know and understand that we're going to be required to satisfy Paulding County, and in this case, perhaps Cobb County as well. So we've got a double burden, and we understand that. Thank you.
Are there any questions to the applicant from the Planning Commission?
I would like to ask, the first phase of this property, then, the plan is to come off of Macklin Road, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Any other questions from the Planning Commission? Board of Commissioners? Hearing none, and I will say this, I understand what you were saying, Mr. Larkin, that this is not about the totality of the project, that it's already been approved and is ongoing. This is about this small little square shown up here in blue on the diagram behind me, and I understand that. I think that it is worthwhile, though, making sure that those that have concerns regarding the project have an opportunity and a forum to voice their concerns, and that they be addressed. As far as the surveying goes, if it was an accident, it was an accident. It's water under the bridge. You can't go back and undo it, but your contractors need to be sensitive to that in the future. Regarding the runoff, I understand there can be a confusion between what stormwater runoff is and what a sanitary sewer will do, which if we're having runoff from a sanitary sewer, we got a lot more problems than just a little mud in the road. But I think that the concerns that they have regarding the local resources, natural resources, such as a designated trout stream, need to be considered heavily in any kind of engagement you have on that property. So I'm in full agreement with people standing up and voicing their opinions and concerns regarding it. But at this time, I think that this board has carried this as far as it possibly can go, and we'll have to make a decision on this particular small square on this property. And then the rest of it will be addressed by either plan review or county staff by either Paulding or Cobb in the build out of the sewer line. So if there are no further questions at this time, I'm going to entertain a motion from the Planning Commission regarding application.
Motion to approve with revised stipulations to mirror the stipulations from the previous.
With the modifications, yes. Thank you, Mr. Lowe. So
Second.
I have a second from Ms. Turnbull. Braden, did you get those changes, the modifications to the language to mirror what was approved previously? Okay, so I have a motion to approve and a second. Do I have, all in favor? Motion passes 6-0 and 1. Again, this application will be forwarded to the Board of Commissioners meeting tonight at 7. The applicant must be present for the application to be heard.
Thank you.
Mr. Robinson.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. Next application, 2019-02 SUP, application by Jason Todd Summerhour, Harvest Moon Farm and Vineyard LLC, Edison Engineering Group, for a special use permit on approximately 17.62 acres to allow for a farm, winery, and tasting room / event center. Property is located in land lot 179, District 19, Section 3. It's on the east side of Spring Road, south side of Willow Springs Road. It's in Commission Post 4. Staff has recommended this is approved for printed stipulations. The applicant is present.
The applicant, will please come around, sign in, state your name, and address your comments to the chair.
Commissioners, Planning Commission, Chairman Palmer. My name is Jason Summerhour, and we're here today seeking approval of the special use permit. We're looking to, my family and I are looking to establish a vineyard and a farm winery on our premises. While I have a great job right now, I'm looking forward into the future, and building out this farm winery and vineyard is part of my retirement plan. So it takes a long time and a lot of planning and a lot of investment to build something like this out. So I'm starting now with plans to build it out over the next 6 to 7 years. We're looking to plant 1 acre of grapes every year for the next 5 to 6 years, which will basically max out the usable area of planting area on our property. This past May, we planted our first acre of Crimson Cabernet grapevines, which have done very well. I'm planting a subsequent acre this March, and we'll continue that over the next 5 to 6 years. So I started last fall working with community development with the goal of this is a new initiative for us. We're never obviously gone down this path before, so I started working with community development to really understand the process, procedures that we need to follow going forward to make sure we don't get down the road and run into troubles. So I've been very transparent there on our plans. I've presented our plans to both community development as well as the Tax Commissioners Board so that they're fully aware of what our plans are. I'll remind you that back in 2018, the County Commissioners passed a farm winery tasting license, which will be the ordinance that we'll follow, and it basically allows for customers to come in, have really small tastings of our wine to see if they like it, and then purchase bottles to then take home to be able to enjoy it later. This is going to be a family facility. I want to underscore family there, not a place for singles to come connect and hang out with lots of loud music. So family atmosphere is part of the building that we're looking to construct. Is going to be a winery and a tasting room put together. So as customers come and visit the tasting room, we can actually take them for tours through the winery and educate them about how wine is made, etc. So it's we're following a template that's used by many other wineries and tasting rooms across Georgia and the nation as well there. So our goal is to open the tasting room in 2020, even though we're looking to start construction this spring, hopefully. Lord willing, that everything passes, gets approved. But my main goal is to get the winery finished out by fall, so that when my first harvest comes in this fall, we can start manufacturing the wine, and then finish up the tasting room early in 2020. We plan on using the tasting room for other subsequent events later down the road, perhaps like corporate events, maybe wedding rehearsal dinners, things like that. It's not very big, but nonetheless, it's a nice place for people to kind of get away and focus on you know, things that they need to focus on. So it lends itself well to things like that. So the economic, there's about 60 wineries across Georgia right now, and the economic impact that they're making, back in 2017, they brought in about $88 million worth of total revenue, and the total impact, economic impact across Georgia was about $4.1 billion if you include things like hotels, gas, travel, them coming through Georgia, et cetera. So this will be a very, you know, us being able to establish this winery and tasting room will help us contribute to agritourism within Georgia and help to grow the Georgia wine industry overall. I guess lastly, you know, vineyards are very beautiful. If you've ever been around them, they're just amazing. So this is an initiative that will really beautify the land around us and for our neighbors, and it's not something that would detract or take away. So I think that's pretty much it, and I'll be glad to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Summerhour. First off, I would ask you if you're familiar with the 4 stipulations that are listed on this application recommended by staff?
Yes, sir.
And are you agreeable to them?
Yes, sir, I am.
This time, I would ask anybody with the Planning Commission if you have questions for the applicant.
What would be the capacity for the event center?
Inside, about 60 people, yeah. So.
Any other questions from Planning Commission?
What type of building do you intend to construct? This metal building or a wood frame building? Or
Yes, sir, it's a metal building.
would you have a facade or anything on the front to dress it up, or just be more of a plain metal building?
No, I have somewhat of a facade. In certain areas, we'll, you know, brick in some areas, certain wood accents, things like maybe a trellis off to the side where people can enjoy wine outside, et cetera. And it's situated right in the middle of the vineyard. So, but for the most part, it's a metal building.
Does the special use permit fit your application better than just rezoning the property? I guess that might be a question for Mr. Robinson, but is there not another zoning that would be more appropriate?
Actually, this is a kind of a newer use that's been occurring more with the wineries. It's very popular nowadays. We like the special use permit because generally these things pop up in a more rural area that may be associated with more residents. And so it's actually not a permitted use in a residential district, but it's a special use, which means they would have to have a special approval by this board and the Board of Commissioners, and so it's a way to manage it.
Are there any other questions from the Planning Commission to the applicant or staff?
You mentioned somewhat brick on the front, on the facade. What, can you explain that a little bit more?
And to be honest, the facade is kind of the last thing that I've really been focused on. I've been focusing on more of the flow inside the winery and tasting room. But if we did decide to do something with brick, it would be maybe about 2 or 3 feet high, like more like wainscoting around the bottom, maybe. But we may just leave it as metal right now. I have that option, and I really haven't decided which direction I'm going to go there.
Any other questions from the Planning Commission?
Approximately how many How many feet will the building be sitting off of the highway? Just a guess.
Oh, I would guess between 400 or 500 feet.
So it's considerable distance off the highway.
It is, and it's you can see it from the highway, but it's kind of hard. You got to really be looking because it's downhill quite a ways from the highway. So it's pretty well surrounded by trees, so it's just not something that's real obvious driving by.
Any other questions from the Planning Commission? Board of Commissioners, any questions?
I'd like to make a comment. Jason and his wife Erica were kind enough to invite the Board of Commissioners out to the property when we were able, and I took advantage of that last Saturday. And it's a beautiful, beautiful area of the county there on Willow Springs Road, and it's a large enough site to where it just blends in very well. And I would just underscore the family farm that it is. Showed pictures of their kids and their kids' friends actually planting the grapes. So it just gave you a good feeling to be around that atmosphere. To underscore the agritourism part, you know, the board is very interested in tourism as a chief piece of an economic development drive that we all share and have. And I can certainly see people coming out and sharing the beauty of West Paulding County and this farm and enjoying a glass of wine with friends.
Are there any other questions from the Board of Commissioners? Thank you, Mr. Summerhour. You can take your seat.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else that would wish to speak on behalf of this application? Is there anyone that would wish to speak in opposition to this application or may have questions, comments, or concerns? At this time, I will entertain a motion regarding application 2019-02-SUP.
Motion to approve.
I
I have a
second.
motion to approve from Mr. Lowe, and I believe the second from Ms. Turnbull. All in favor? Motion passes 6-0 and 1. Again, this will be forwarded to the Board of Commissioners meeting this evening at 7 o'clock. You'll need to be present for it to be considered. Next application.
Next application, 2019-03 SUP, City of Hiram. Application by Brian J. Yoon and Son Brian Inc., Lisa Moore Chower, Esquire, and Berman Frank Van Horn PC Law Firm for a special use permit on approximately 1.48 acres for retail sale of distilled spirits, beer, and wine by the package. Request is made in accordance with the City of Hiram Code and Ordinances, Article 10, Section B, 8. Property is located in land lot 593, District 19, Section 3. It's on the north side of Windy Bagwell Parkway, which is US 278, east of Greenfield Road. It's in Commission Post 3. It's also within the city limits of Hiram. Staff has recommended if this is approved, there's one stipulation that's printed. The applicant is present.
The applicant will please come around, sign in, state your name, and address your comments to the chair. Brayden. Sorry for that delay. You can continue now.
Sorry, I'm putting my paperwork together. I'm Lisa Morshower. I'm with the law firm Berman Fink Van Horn, and this is Brian Young. He is the applicant for this special use permit. It's in the city of Hiram, and in Hiram, you have to get a special use permit in order to operate a retail package store selling beer, wine, and liquor by the package. This is at 5337 Windy Bagwell Parkway, Suite 113. It's a shopping center in a very busy part of Hiram. It's a very commercialized area. The zoning is B2, which allows for a retail package store, but it does require the SUP. This property is surrounded by property that is also zoned B2 and are being used as commercial uses to the north, east, and west. And then to the south, it's across Windy Bagwell Parkway is a planned shopping center zoning, and it's being used as retail commercial. It's a very, very commercialized area. The residential area is very far from there. And we have submitted an analysis of factors that you consider in determining whether a special use permit should be granted, and we believe we meet all of the factors. There's no concerns as to any adversity that it would impact neighboring properties in any kind of adverse way. The building itself has been in existence for quite some time. There's a lot of commercial tenants. Well, it is all commercial tenants in the shopping center. There's a barber shop, there's a tattoo parlor, there's a vape shop, and I think there's a gift shop. So the space that this was previously was a mobile cell phone location, a PC Mobile, I believe, and they left. They've moved to a new location, so the space has opened up. It's not a very large space. I think it's 1,375 square feet, so it's not a big space. There's ample parking. The lot has a lot of parking spaces. There is a Popeyes chicken next door to it. There's a lot of parking in that space as well. So the ingress and egress out of the property is very good. I actually was over there and drove all around it. Very easy in and out. And the traffic is not going to be impacted whatsoever by this business. It will be, it's very natural and a very compatible use for where this is located. It's all commercialized around there. We had a distance survey done because when you do an alcohol license, which is a totally separate thing, we'll have to do that through the city of Hiram. But as part of their application, you have to do an alcohol distance survey, which has measurements to various uses, and you can't get an alcohol license unless you meet those distances. We meet all of the distances. We're far enough away from every use that the regulations require, so we will meet those requirements. We believe we're in compliance with all your criteria that you look at in determining. The staff has recommended approval with the one condition that we meet the city of Hiram's regulations, and one of the things is the distances, which I just said, but any other requirements that they have, there's an application process that we'll have to go through. So this part of it is just allowing for the use of it. The other part we have to go through if we're granted this license is to go through the city of Hiram's alcohol licensing process. And that's a whole separate process where they actually look at the applicant's history, their background, their financial information. The state also does the same thing. The state has a very thorough process where we have to go through that as well. And they look at distances as well. And we meet all the distances that are required by the local and state process. The staff recommends approval, and we would ask that you approve it as well. I have put in the record objections just for purposes of the record in case they're needed, and also the impact analysis statement should be in the record. I have some pictures of the location, which I can just put up on your screen, I think. Does it show? Yeah, that's an aerial view. Where the little balloon is not, that's the building, but the actual space is where my finger is. It's the very end. And you can see there's a lot of parking, and then the churches is right over here. The ingress and egress is very good. And it's all 2-lane on this side and 2-lane on this side with a divider. All commercial up and down here. The homes, I think, are back in here. This is a business right here. There's an automotive parts place or service place right here. Everything around it is commercial or service oriented. And There's another look at the front of it. It's a nice shopping center. It's not in bad repair at all. It's been kept up to date. I don't know if you can you see that? Or do I need to turn it?
You can turn it.
How do I turn it?
The other way.
The other way.
There you go.
There you go. And his space is where the Metro PCP was. That's the space we're trying to get the SUP for. But you can see there's a lot of parking, and it's a very nice shopping center. I also have a copy of that distance survey that I was talking about that I'd like to just put in your screen, if I can find it. So as you can see, the surveyor does a radius measurement, and he goes all the way around, and you can see that it's all commercial. B2, 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 B2 over here, PSC over here, B2 over here. It meets all the distance requirements. And the list of distances are right here. So he has to map out where the closest church is, the school, the alcohol treatment center, the nearest liquor store, the residential property that's closest by, a park, and I can't read it, nursery school, and public swimming pool. So those are the things required to be mapped out, and we meet all of the requirements. I believe that's all I have, unless you have some questions.
You've read the stipulation listed by staff, and I will only correct one thing. Staff is recommending the following stipulation, should this be approved by the Hiram City Council. It's not necessarily a recommendation for approval by staff. Just, there's a little bit of a difference in terminology.
Okay, thank you.
At this time, I would ask, are you aware of the one stipulation and you're agreeable to it?
Yes.
Are there any questions from the Planning Commission to the applicant?
How far is the distance to the next liquor store? Or
It is.
what does the Hiram ordinance say about that?
I think the Hiram ordinance actually doesn't have anything in it, but the state law does, and it says 1,500 feet. I don't have the Hiram ordinance. Actually, I do have the Hiram ordinance with me, but I'm not 100% sure that the Hiram ordinance has it in there, but the state law does, and it's got to be 1,500 feet away from the nearest store. And it is 4,860 feet to the nearest store.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions from the Planning Commission? Board of Commissioners?
Do you own a liquor store at this moment somewhere else? Now, the property next door, this is probably a question for Hiram, but I know there's been a building tore down at the old Brewster's next door with plans of a liquor store. Is that still in the making?
There currently is an SUP in place approved by the Mayor and Council of Hiram for the purpose of building a liquor store on that piece of property, which used to be both the Brewster's and the car wash. There was a do-it-yourself car wash. That's all been demoed, and it's currently under construction by permit.
But the way the code reads, it's discussing an operating store, a store that's actually in operation. So the code does not look at a store that's planned. It looks at whether there's an operating store that's selling alcohol. It's the way the state law looks at it. And there is not one selling alcohol.
Are there any other questions by the Board of Commissioners? Was there someone from Planning Commission had a question before I continue? All right. You can reserve your time if you would like at this point.
Okay, I'd like to, thank you.
And I will ask if there's anyone else that would wish to speak on behalf of this application to come forward and speak. Is there anyone that would wish to speak in opposition to this application? If you would come forward, sign in, state your name, and address your comments to the chair. Ms. Morchera and Mr. Young, you can take your seat.
Oh, actually, I need to sign my name too. I'm going to sign in 10, so sign on 11.
Good afternoon. My name's Joel Larkin. I'm with Sam's Larkin Huff and Valley in Marietta. I'm here today on behalf of Kronos Development LLC. We were before this board this past summer seeking a SUP to build a 10,000 square foot plus package store on the 2 tracts of property immediately adjacent to this property. They actually have a common curb cut between the driveways. They connect. My clients have until sometime in July to open that facility under the current SUP. They purchased the property in reliance on that SUP. They closed on a construction loan back in December and have demoed the property and are currently in the process, if it ever stops raining, of developing that property. They've got the pad almost prepared. Once we get that done, rain will not be as much of an issue. We have the alcohol license prepared, the application, and we've been meeting and speaking with the city on that. It's our position that under the applicable state law and under the City of Hiram ordinance, that we have a vested right to development of that project on that site, and that approval and opening of a liquor store on the adjacent piece would be unconstitutional and would violate our rights. There is actually a provision in the Hiram ordinance that requires that package stores be located 500 yards from one another, and that's in section 6.78B. In this case, I believe you measure it from the front door of one package store to the adjacent property line. So in this case, we'd probably be within 100 feet. So it's our position that it would be violative of our rights, and it's also our position that I don't think they could get approved. Once our license is submitted, I think they'd be blocked under state law. Finally, the special use permit is a process similar to the winery where the local government takes into consideration all the factors, and I've not seen the analysis that she's done. I would concur that this general area is a wonderful area for a package store, and that's why we chose it, as far as the surrounding uses. But because we're there first, and I don't want to sound like a 4-year-old, but we're there first, damn it, that, there are a number of places in the city of Hiram that they could go. They just need to relocate 500 yards away from us. And we're happy to respond to any questions that you may have.
Are there any questions from the planning commission to Mr. Larkin?
So how close is this? So how close? Yeah, we'll get it on in a minute. So how close is your proposed development to this proposed SUP?
I was looking for that photograph. We are the immediate adjacent property owner. If you look at that site plan, we actually touch it to the right. She put up an aerial photograph, and it showed this shopping center and then a car wash and a Brewster's. That's not a current photo. The Brewster's and the car wash are now down, and we've got chain link fence on that property line next to them. We've demoed everything. We've torn up the pavement. They're in the process right now of putting in the stormwater and the sewer and the other things. And like I said, we had hoped to have a pad ready by the end of this month, and if it doesn't rain anymore, we still may. But we're very much on schedule to open in accordance with our approved SUP.
Are there any other questions for Mr. Larkin? Board of Commissioners?
I would ask our community developers, is this a valid application if the ordinance is not satisfied?
Mr. Chairman, that, for us, it's a land use. Is this a good use for that property? It's not. We don't regulate Hiram's alcohol ordinance. We regulate and assist them with their zoning ordinance, and it met those qualifications. The zoning ordinance doesn't specify distances between liquor stores in the city of Hiram. And so that's where we were able to take that application on their behalf. And just to point out, this is a subject property. This is the proposed other liquor store property. for Mr. Ashby.
Are there any other questions from the planning commission?
Yes, what's the difference between the Hiram ordinance and the county ordinance as far as distance to?
I'm gonna make just an announcement for information purposes also. Under Georgia code in unincorporated Paulding County, you cannot have a liquor store or distilled spirit package store. And so we couldn't even accept application anywhere in Paulding County. It's unincorporated. Those are only allowed in the cities of Dallas and Hiram. And so the county's alcohol ordinance would not entertain liquor by package sales. And that would be a difference from Hiram and even Dallas's ordinances on liquor by package sales. As far as the zoning ordinance requiring a special use permit within the city of Hiram, the county does not have that option. And so there wouldn't be any difference or to compare.
Does that answer your question?
Does that help?
Yeah, so we're stuck with the 500-yard distance. Is that
That
correct?
is a requirement not by the city's zoning ordinance, but by the city's alcohol ordinance, which is not actually being a part of this application today. It means they had to follow it as a stipulation, but that's how we took the special use permit.
I understand.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
But does not the state have the precedent over the county or the city of Hiram with the distance?
The state requirement, which wherever it may be, is a Hiram can go above that minimal that the state sets.
We can be,
Which I
the
do
city
believe
can be
Hiram's
more
ordinance-
stringent than the
Right.
state law.
Okay.
But it
So
cannot
they're
go
a little
exceed the
less.
state law.
They're
Okay.
more restricted than the state law, the city, is, if that's my understanding of what was mentioned here today.
And it's my understanding that the package store that's being constructed has been already approved for their SUP.
They were
That's good.
approved by the city of Hiram City Council, I believe it was last summer,
Okay.
2018.
And that's not something that we had to approve here?
That did come through this planning commission as a recommending board,
Okay.
and it was recommended by the planning commission last year.
In the same fashion that this application has
Right,
come
and
before
so
this board.
and I believe that Mr. Larkin said that they had until June,
I believe that was,
July,
I mean, July of this year to follow through, I guess.
I think that's a part of their alcohol ordinance, that if they obtain a special use permit, something's got to happen within a period of a year.
Okay.
I'm not sure of that, but that's what I'm understanding.
There's a time frame assigned to it, yes.
Yes.
There any other questions for staff regarding this application? As county attorney, Mr. Phillips, is there anything that you would like to clarify based on what has been said?
I think everything that I've heard so far has been accurate and on point with what the law is. State of Georgia has some minimum requirements. Municipalities do have authority to make those requirements more restrictive. Hiram's ordinance is 500 yards.
Are there any other questions for the staff or for the applicant from the Planning Commission? Or the Board of Commissioners? We had one member who stood up to speak in opposition. Is there anyone else that would wish to speak in opposition to this application? Hearing none, there was time remaining. Ms. Morchauer, if you would like to respond.
I do want to respond. This process is completely separate from the alcohol licensing process. This process just says that they have the right to use that space for that purposes. They don't get an alcohol license until they go through the City of Hiram process. That is where Hiram will look at what's going on with the other store. The code specifically says that the store cannot be 500 yards. This is from the City of Hiram. I found the location, thanks to Mr. Larkin, of the section. The store cannot be located within 500 yards of another licensed packaged distilled spirits business. That store doesn't have a license, and they will not have a license for quite some time. And that's the way the law works. The law allows us, my client, to come in here and ask for the SUP because the property is zoned for that purpose with an SUP. And because the criteria are met, we believe that the SUP should issue. Then we have to go through that whole alcohol licensing process, and the City of Hiram will have to determine whether the store can be licensed for an alcohol license. And the other store, if they can get their license before us, they might get it first. But that's the way that's the way the law is set up. And I will also say that there are some exemptions in the state law. I don't have it with me, and I don't really want to go into all the exemptions, but there are some exemptions in the state law. So the decision here today should not be in regard to that other store. It really, the distance to the other store does not come into your decision. It comes into the alcohol license process, which will be looked at by the City of Hiram and probably by the state of Georgia. And I've had other cases. I do a lot of alcohol licensing around Georgia. I used to be an attorney for the City of Atlanta. I did licensing at the City of Atlanta for many years. There are stores in Atlanta that are closer than 1,500 feet to each other because of certain things in the law and case law that has panned out. So I ask that you not consider the fact that there's this other store, because that's not really in your realm of review today. The question is, can we get a SUP for this location because we meet your requirements and the criteria that are in your provisions, which are listed in Article X, Section A4. And I did submit this analysis, which hits all of those, and I can go through them if you want me to, but I believe we meet all of them.
You have 5 minutes remaining. Just want to
Okay.
make sure you're aware.
So I would like to make sure that I put into the record, I've got some certified copies of code sections. I've got the alcohol code from the City of Hiram. I've got the section that deals with SUPs for Paulding County and this process, which is Article, let's see what it is. It's Article X, special use permits. And I've also got sections that deal with zoning in B2 and B1, because that's the zoning category we're in. And B2 incorporates B1, so I put both of them. I've got both of them. So I've got 4 separate sections of the City of Hiram's code. And I've got the pictures that I'd like to submit into the record as well, which we discussed a minute ago, which is the picture of the aerial view and the front view. So I've got those 2 things. You've got my impact analysis, and I will say that every question asks about whether there's an adverse impact on surrounding property or in the community. Every one of those questions is answered in the negative. This property and this use will not impact negatively any of the other properties. And I'm not discussing the other potential store. The other fact is that store may not ever get open. That's the other thing that could happen. So for that very reason, it's not fair for this application to be held up because of the other store. They have to go get an alcohol license. And if they get it first, then we might have to work with that. If we get it first, then they're going to have to possibly work with that. So this process is not about that alcohol license. This is about the SUP and whether the zoning and the use is proper for this location.
Thank you, Ms. Morchower. Is there any questions for the applicant from the Planning Commission?
Oh, I'm sorry, I'd like to put the distance survey in too.
Okay. Mr. Robinson, will you take that from her?
I'm not sure where it went though. I don't see it anymore.
Mr. Chairman, we have most of this information already for our records, but we will affirm that we will accept this information, including the distance chart also.
Thank you very much.
I may have to, I don't know where it went, so I may have to submit it.
It's up
oh,
here
it's right
somewhere.
here. Here it is. I got it.
Opposition was given a chance to speak. We've moved on.
Thank you.
So at this time, were there any questions from the Planning Commission to the applicant or from the Board of Commissioners? Thank you very much. At this time, I will entertain a motion with regard to
Motion to
application
approve.
2019-03-SUP for the City of Hiram. I had a motion to approve with the listed stipulation
Correct.
from Mr. Lowe. Do I have a second?
I second.
I have a second from Mr. Leggett. All in favor? All opposed? Was that all in favor?
Yeah.
Motion passes 6-0 and 1. Again, this application will be forwarded to the city of Hiram for consideration at its next available meeting, meeting advertising requirements, and that's to be determined by the city, not this board. Mr. Robinson.
Last agenda item is public hearing regarding amendments to the City of Hiram zoning ordinance. This is regarding the Hiram Downtown Historic Overlay District ordinance to amend that to current ordinance. I just thought I'd give a quick little brief if have more information.
Please.
This right here would pretty much oversee additional type of development in the downtown area, regards to development standards for new and redeveloped projects in that area, and it would also require building design, including height and material standards, landscaping, just to highlight.
If you can't sleep at night, that's good reading, I tell you.
Well, at this time, I will open the public meeting for reception of public comments regarding the Hiram Downtown Historic Overlay District Ordinance. Anyone wishing to speak would please come forward, sign in, state your name, and address your comments to the chair. Hearing or seeing nobody making that move, I will now close the public comment portion of the public hearing for this proposed amendment change to Hiram zoning ordinance. There is no vote, I believe, that needs to take place, Mr. Phillips? That's correct. So everybody can mark abstain if you'd like. And at this time, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn by Mr. Lowe. Was second by Mr. Sudan. Yeah, y'all give me a chance to recognize each one of you. They're popping off like popcorn up here. All in favor? I didn't catch this side. Sorry, I had to. All in favor? Motion passes 6-0 and 1. Thank you very much. Y'all have a wonderful day.